Greetings, Corpse Clubbers, and welcome to another episode of Corpse Club Horror BFFs. I am one of your Horror BFFs, Patrick Bromley, joined as always by my Horror BFF, Heather Wixson. Hi, Heather.
Hello. I feel like I should say something festive for the holidays, but... You
should.
I don't know. Ho, ho, ho.
Should I have called you Ho, ho, Heather Wixson?
Yeah. That's what I am. I'm a ho, ho, ho.
That's how I refer to her year-round, everyone.
Yes.
Ho, ho, Heather Wixson.
Yes, that is me.
After missing the month of November because I was a sick person and Heather is a very, very busy person, we are back for our December episode of Horror BFFs with an episode we are calling A Very Fulci Christmas. Is that right?
I think so, yes. I think that's what we're going to go with. You know what's funny is people are going to be like, wait, they didn't do an episode in November?
I know. I probably shouldn't have even called attention to it. No.
Yeah, no one's going to care about us.
I don't think anybody noticed. Hey, where's that episode? But hey, we're back and we're talking about one of my very favorite subjects, Lucio Fulci, because Heather, you just watched your very first Fulci films, correct?
I did. It was very exciting. I wish I could say they were leisure viewings, but they were fun. But it was more because I had the distinct pleasure of getting to speak with Giannetto De Rossi. And I realized, a lot of times when I do interviews with effects guys, like most of the time, like I've seen their stuff. And I realized, like with Giannetto, he is a living legend in the effects industry. I don't think even people realize the legacy that he and his family have in Italy. His father was actually the first basically the first makeup effects person in the entire country of Italy.
Wow. Like
back in the 30s. Like nobody did it before his dad did, which I had no idea. And so I realized I was like, oh, if I'm going to be talking to somebody, of this stature, not that I phoned it in other times, but like I've seen most of the other stuff and I was like, I gotta get on this. And I know you were very excited when I texted you and I was like, I'm going into my Fulci movies now. Because it's long overdue. I've been trying to get into, watching Fulci stuff for years now. And it just seems like everything else kind of keeps coming up. So this was the perfect opportunity to, dive into 3 different, movies by him.
And those 3 movies are, Zombi, a.k.a. Zombie 2, The Beyond, and The House by the Cemetery, correct?
Those are the 3, yes.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah, I actually didn't even realize, because a lot of people, those are the 3 movies that they talk about when they talk about Lucio and Giannetto's sort of collaboration, but they actually had worked on some of Fulci's comedies in the 60s, which I had no idea. So that's kind of fascinating. And I know nothing of Fulci beyond his horror stuff.
Nor do I. I've seen some of the movies he made in other genres, but I've never seen any of his comedies. They're very hard to come by in the United States. I'm not even sure they were ever released on any format, maybe VHS, but I don't even know about that.
Yeah, I feel like in this day and age, because we keep talking about sort of film preservation and not losing movies and things like that, I would love to see some of those films kind of come to light, but I don't know who saves them. Right. I don't know if there's a company in Italy that would do it and then sort of sell the rights over here to the US. I'd be happy to import movies, Blu-rays or whatever, because we have to do it sometimes. But yeah, I'm really curious about the comedy stuff because I was just like, for me, when I hear Fulci, I think horror. But he had like this really robust career in drama, in comedy, in all these sort of other subgenres before he was really doing horror, which I think is something that a lot of film fans don't talk about enough.
Yeah, his horror career is only about a 10-year period. Because it starts in 79 with Zombi and it carries through until, kind of the early 90s. His last movie was 91. So it's really only about 10 years that he was making horror movies, but that is certainly what he's best remembered for. And again, I've seen a handful of his other, Lizard in a Woman's Skin and Don't Torture a Duckling. Those are kind of giallo films and sort of horror adjacent. And I've seen
or as I say, genre adjacent.
Genre adjacent. I've seen Silver Saddle, and I've seen 4 of the Apocalypse, which are his westerns. But yeah, it's not until Zombie in 1979 that he really starts making full-throated horror movies. So I guess it makes sense to start there. I've talked about this a lot on my other podcasts and on my website. But I have a weird relationship with Fulci because I didn't get him for a while. I saw Zombie and I saw a couple other movies as midnight screenings, and I just kind of threw my hands up. Like, I don't get this guy. These movies don't make sense. They're weird. They are, they stop cold just for these sequences of gore. And why is he doing that? The narratives are confusing and illogical. But then I kept going back to his movies. I kept wanting to revisit them. And I don't remember. I think it was a viewing of the New York Ripper, which if you've ever seen the New York Ripper, you would know how ridiculous this claim is, because it is his sleaziest and most outrageous movie by a pretty wide margin. But it was seeing the New York Ripper that I was like, oh, I'm actually really into this. And it got me to rethink and revisit a lot of his movies. And now I'm like an enormous Fulci fan. But the first time I saw Zombie, I was kind of left cold by it. I thought it was okay. And obviously I've come around on it a lot, although it's still not one of my favorites of his. It's, somewhere around number 5, maybe, in terms of if I was ranking all of his movies. But what were your thoughts on Zombie?
I really liked it. I was curious because and maybe just because you've been around it a little bit longer. So why is it Zombie, but it's also Zombie 2? I guess is like my one question, because it was interesting because Brian was like, "Oh, you're watching Zombie," and then he says to me, because we play catch up on these things. He's like, well, I have Zombie 2 on DVD, so I would always want to watch Zombie because of Zombie 2 is in New York or whatever. And then Zombie opens and it's in New York. And I was like, wait, these are the same movie. Yeah. Do you know what that is? Cause I have no idea.
It was just a marketing thing. So Dawn of the Dead had been released in Italy as Zombie.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And so as a way of getting people into the theater, they marketed this as though it was a sequel to Dawn of the Dead. It's very similar to, are you familiar with all the La Casa movies?
Yes.
So for those of you listening who aren't familiar with this, in Italy, there's 6 sequels to The Evil Dead, because The Evil Dead was released as La Casa in Italy. And so they just started releasing all these other horror movies as La Casa 2, La Casa 3, La Casa 4. And none of them are sequels to Evil Dead. None of them have anything to do with Evil Dead. But it has all these crazy sequels. And this was the same principle. It was just, how can we trick people into thinking this is a sequel to Dawn of the Dead? Well, it's got zombies in it, so we'll just call it Zombie 2.
Interesting. Yeah, because when I finished and he came out and he was like, oh, how was it? And I was like, at that point I looked up and I was like, I think this is the movie you thought you hadn't seen. I think this is what you thought you had or whatever. And he's like, really? And he's like, why do they call it Zombie 2? And sometimes it's Zombie. He was like, I don't know. And I was like, now you're asking me questions I can't possibly begin to sort of answer. But I really liked it. I think I'd always been kind of I don't know. I think people had always sort of built Fulci up to be this really extreme, grotesque, experience for viewers, his movies, his genre movies specifically. And of course there is some pretty gnarly stuff that happens in his films. I haven't gotten to the New York Ripper yet, so we'll see how I feel after that. Everybody keeps saying oh, you should prepare yourself. And I'm like, okay. But I didn't think it was that grotesque. There was some really cool stuff in it, but it was interesting to see a zombie movie, because I think so much of zombie movies in the US, up until that point were sort of a lot of them took place at night. A lot of them are dreary. A lot of them are sort of cold feeling. And this is a sun-soaked, like experience. And I think that's what all sort of makes it a little more unsettling is that, you know, in sort of a similar way of like how I feel like when I watch Serpent and the Rainbow, like to have sort of these walking nightmares in like bright sunlight was kind of cool. I just thought it was like really interesting. And I you know, that being sort of my first Fulci, like it prepared me to sort of get ready for the weirdness of his storytelling. Because there is an abruptness, which, you know, we'll sort of talk about as we go into the Beyond or the House Bed Cemetery. But I think this is the least abrupt of these three movies. But it's really interesting. Like I found out like this was like the first time like he went to the States to shoot anything, and they didn't know anything about permits or anything. So they stole all of that stuff in New York. Which is amazing when you consider that final shot. Holy shit, right? You know, but I actually found that out through talking to Giannetto. He was like, we didn't know what permits were. He's like, we just went and shot. And just basically we had a couple guys on each side of us always watching for the cops. And he's like, and if everybody saw cops, like they'd whistle and we'd have to like hustle and get out of there. He's like, but it never happened. And I'm like, that's amazing to me. Like, I can't even imagine that, like trying to steal those kind of shots or like the stuff with the boats. Right. Like in the harbor, like it's the harbor. That's where like, you know, people are being, you know, they have people who monitor these things and they somehow got away with all of it. But I really liked it. I mean, I think actually it would make a really fun double feature within Serpent and the Rainbow. Yeah, you got the whole island thing and the resurrecting of the dead. You know, this is much more of a sort of a voodoo zombie than the traditional Romero zombies, but they're also still decomposed. You know, it's still the dead rising from the grave. So it's a weird mixture of sort of the Jacques Tourneur, I Walked with a Zombie, and the Romero zombie. But that is a cool idea for a double feature. I like that. Yeah, and it's interesting because they both sort of play with this idea of like white saviorism as well. I mean, except I think in Zombie 2 or Zombie or whatever, I think it's worse because I don't think sort of the quote unquote white saviors do anything to help the situation. No, not really. Whereas at least Serpent and the Rainbow, there is some sort of finale to it, like where, you know, he shouldn't have been meddling there, but at least something good sort of comes out of it at the end. Where this, it's like, no, like they never should have been doing any of this stuff. Like you had no business being there and doing these things because it just makes it even worse. But yeah, I was really surprised by how much I liked it. Oh, not that I thought I was going to hate it or anything, but like zombie movies. Okay, whatever. You know, especially, you know, coming from a director from a different place and you just don't know if it's going to translate or anything like that. And I really did. I really had a lot of fun with it. And I'm so thankful to like Shudder, who basically, you know, I know you gave me a couple Fulci movies to have, but Zombie was not one of them. So it was not. And I was like, okay, what do I do? And I was like, Shudder, my savior, my streaming savior, not my white savior, but my streaming savior. They were like, you know, they've got a lot of really good Fulci stuff there. And I was like, wow, this is why we don't deserve Shudder. Because 10 years ago, and if I didn't own it, how was I going to watch it? Right. You know, of course, now I feel like we get like a new special edition of it like every year. Yeah, Blue Underground just re-released it as a 3-disc 4K remaster. The third disc is the soundtrack, which is certainly worth owning because this is one of my favorite Fabio Frizzi scores, particularly the theme. Yeah. Some of the other score, you know, the more Caribbean influenced stuff I'm not as into, but the theme for Zombie is like the greatest thing ever. Yeah, no, it was really good because I love sort of like doctors who don't know any better stories, like, and they just, you know, and obviously Dr. Menard on this he is just the worst doctor ever. You know, so much though that he's pretty much willing to like sacrifice his wife and her safety basically to just keep doing these things, which are just never going to work. And I thought they had some really, I mean, obviously there's some great gore stuff in it. But I really like, I think one of my favorite sequences, when Anne and Peter, if I'm not mistaken, those are the two. I'm I'm trying to remember off the top of my head when they're when they're sitting in the grass and the zombie comes out of the ground.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I mean, we've seen zombies come out of the ground, but we're always expecting them in cemeteries.
Right.
You know, and I think that is such a really fun, unexpected moment that I'm just like, wow, you can see the influence of this movie on so many other movies. Like, I don't know. It was kind of mind blowing in some ways. But it was pretty cool. I had a lot of fun with it. And I would love to watch the 4K version. That's really, I'd be curious to kind of see that. Now, do you know, is there versions that exist that has like extra stuff to it, or is it still?
No, I believe it's just the same. Yeah. It's just the one cut of the movie as far as I know. Okay. I don't really think there are a lot of like alternate cuts of Fulci's films. I know there's a few for Argento because his stuff would be recut for the United States, Deep Red and Phenomena, and I don't know if the cut of Tenebrae is different. The Unsane cut, it was released as Unsane in the United States, but I don't think the cut itself is any different. Okay. But I believe the cuts are all the same for Fulci movies.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I obviously when you talk about this movie, you have to talk about like the zombie versus shark moment.
Oh, absolutely.
Because like, holy shit, is that like the coolest thing that's ever happened in a movie? I think it might be. And I'm sort of mad at myself that it took me so long to watch it. But again, I think as a kid, I don't think I would have appreciated it as much. And maybe it might have turned me off to the movie, even though it has like cool stuff. But like, I had to laugh because I love how like, I think it's Susan. She's the one who goes diving, right?
Correct.
With her super, very respectable diving outfit where she's like
naked in a bathing cap.
Yeah, pretty much. Like she's like, there's like barely any coverage, south of the border where you're just like,
but her hair's going to stay dry, which is important.
It is. But I was just like, wow, like you're wearing gear, which has to like be chafing you, but you're just wearing like this like tissue paper bottom. Yeah. Okay. Like, there you go. I'm like, we definitely got a lot of her breastises in there. Yeah. Because that's how everybody goes scuba diving, I think.
I know.
But yeah, and I it was one of those things like I'd always heard people talk about that scene, and then it happens, and you're like, oh my God, this is like movie magic. And it's just so cool. Like, and I mean, the thing is, it's like when you're doing like, and I hate to get nerdy with makeup and stuff, but when you're doing regular makeups, like that's already tough enough to do, when you're not dealing with water, but to make an underwater zombie work, like what a pain in the ass. And it's so cool. So I don't know, that alone, I'm like, if you've never watched Zombie, do it, because you're going to see zombie versus shark in water, and it's awesome and amazing, and your life will never be the same.
And yet, I believe that scene was shot against Fulci's wishes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
it was
not.
Know that.
Yeah, he did not want to do that scene, and actually, I think it was shot without him. It was his producer's idea. The producer was Ugo Tucci, who really wanted to include a shark in the movie to sort of capitalize on Jaws, and so he wanted a zombie fighting a shark, and Fulci thought it was too stupid and refused to do it, and so it was shot by the producer.
Interesting. Like I don't know much about like different types of sharks, but like how the hell did they do that and not have somebody like attacked by a shark?
I believe they tranquilized the shit out of it.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. I mean, at least it wasn't like in like Scrooged where they're trying to like staple antlers to mice. So, okay. I mean, just made them a little sleepy. I guess that's all right.
Yeah.
But that was like really, cause like I was sort of, I don't know why, but I just had like, whenever he talked about that scene, I just was sort of expecting like a weird, like Jaws 3D thing where like they were going to juxtapose like shark footage against zombie footage, but it wasn't going to be real. And then I was like, oh shit, this is happening. And I was like, wow. I actually rewound it because I was so excited. I was like, okay. I was like, I have to see that again. So.
Well, and that's one of the things that made me fall, the scene is such a non sequitur, and if you took it out of the movie, it doesn't change the movie at all, but one of the things that really made me fall in love with Italian horror when I finally got my head out of my ass and fell in love with it was, it's constantly showing me stuff that no other movies have shown me. And nowhere is that more apparent than in the zombie versus shark fight scene, which is just, it exists just to put in a movie. Like somebody wanted to see that, it put in a movie and realized that dream. And, the movie is certainly better for it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm waiting for Walking Dead to do it now.
That comes in the next season. They have been systematically ripping off Romero, but now they're going to start ripping off Fulci.
And the show will be better for it, I guess.
Perhaps.
Because they always do sort of homages and stuff because I know Nicotero is like and I mean, I don't even know if they would say they're ripping off Romero, and maybe this is a tangent I need to go down, but I think because of Nicotero being who he is, like I see it more as homages, and I think especially
the specific references are certainly homages. I just think the overall thing, and this probably goes back more to what's his name who created the show.
Kirkman.
Yes, thank you, Robert Kirkman. Is ultimately, I think, the one who is ripping off Romero. In writing the book, I mean, he's writing a Romero story basically, and using Romero zombies, and all the characters have Romero dynamics. So there's a lot of Romero in the DNA of the show. But yeah, the specific references that Nicoteros puts in there, obviously, I agree. I wouldn't call those ripoffs.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I have no dog in this fight anyway because I haven't watched the show in 2 years.
Oh, you're missing out. I'm just kidding. It's fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, a lot of times I'll be watching previews or something for it, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should get back into it. But
no,
I just don't have I just don't have the hours in the day anymore. TV is so tough, especially when there's so much Fulci to be had.
Well, the other big memorable sequence from Zombie is the splinter in the eyeball.
Oh, God, yeah, that was gnarly AF.
And again,
it's PG-13 rating here.
Yeah, it's Olga Carlatos, who later shows up in Fulci's Murder Rock, which is his aerobics slasher movie. Has her eyeball impaled on a giant wooden splinter. And again, it's one of those great things where, and this is where you really see, I think, Fulci's skill as a filmmaker, because he draws it out for such an insanely long amount of time that he convinces you, if you've seen enough movies and you're conditioned to the rhythms of editing, he convinces you he's not going to show it because he's drawn it out for so long that you're sure that, okay, we're definitely not going to see this. And then you see it in full detail. I mean, you see the moment that it pushes into the eye. Oh. It's not like it cuts away and cuts back and she's got the splinter in the eye. I mean, he just relishes the moment where it punctures her eyeball, and it is hard to watch.
No pun intended. That's why we make the big bucks.
That's right.
For puns like that. It is really harrowing. I have a thing about eye trauma. I have a thing about
you love Fulci.
I know. I mean, there's a lot of eye things going on in his movies so far. I've noticed. I have a thing about Achilles heel trauma.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So those are my two body trauma things where I'm just like, oh my God. And that scene, I didn't look away because I knew I had to really experience it, but holy shit. And again, I think that's such a, because nowadays you'd either do it digitally or you would sort of cut and come back and things like that. And just the way that he doesn't let you let go of that moment. He's making you watch this.
Right.
And it is so gruesome, but in a really great way. yeah, I was just like, I completely forgot about it, which again, when you see like the Blue Underground covers, when it has like the eye going near the splinter, like, I don't know how I forgot that was in there. And then it starts happening and you're like, oh dear God. And then like 2 minutes later, you're like, oh my God, it's still okay.
Yeah.
It's so gnarly, but it's awesome.
It is. You haven't gotten to it yet, but I think one of his best movies, in the running for his best movie, I think, is City of the Living Dead, a.k.a. The Gates of Hell. And maybe this is a spoiler. Maybe you already know about this scene. There's a sequence in that movie where a woman begins vomiting up her insides.
Oh.
And it reminds me of the splinter in the eyeball because it goes on for so long, and once again, he refuses to allow you to look away. There's a kind of nightmare logic to it where it's like you're having a dream. When you're having a nightmare, these terrible things can be happening, and you can't avoid it because you can't wake up. Your body won't let you look away. Your body won't let you wake up. You just have to sit there and like deal with this trauma. And the throwing up of the insides is very much in the same vein as the splinter in the eyeball because he refuses to allow you to look away from it. It's just this horrible thing that you have to bear witness to, and it's like having a nightmare unfold right in front of you.
Yeah, I was not prepared. I mean, like, eye trauma happens here or there, but boy, you again, it's one of those scenes where you can see where a lot of people were very much influenced by that. I think there, especially when you look at like the scene in Hostel.
Oh yeah.
When the guy has a blowtorch, it's like, oh my God, okay, I get it. And it's cool because this movie is now like 40 years old.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fun now that I could sort of start, becoming the meme from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with Charlie, where he has all these little lines drawn where like, I put zombie in the middle and you're like, oh, but you could connect it to this and this and that. It's interesting because it's a movie that, it feels obscure, but I think to a lot of horror directors coming up in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, like I can see where it influenced some different, creative decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, this was one of those movies that like this was for the hardcore horror fans, in the 80s. It was a video nasty. It was kind of hard to come by. The cannibal movies are one step beyond this. That's, Cannibal Holocaust is about as extreme as you can get. But I would say just this side of that is a lot of Fulci's kind of splatter movies. And so I think it's a movie that made a real impression on a lot of young filmmakers growing up.
No, absolutely. And I also think, when you consider where horror was in the late 70s, especially here in the States, it feels so different. Mm-hmm. Because, here we were, kind of coming off of like Rosemary's Baby, and we have invasion of the Body Snatchers and things like that were sort of more psychological, more like weighty. And this is just like a really fun excursion into a nightmare.
Right.
And I liked it for that. Like, I was like, I could see myself enjoying Zombie quite a bit in the future.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm sorry it took me so long.
No, I'm the important thing is that you saw it. Exactly. What do you want to go to next? You want to go to House by the Cemetery or the Beyond?
We could do House by the Cemetery next and then go into the Beyond. Because I think the Beyond, I'm like you were. House of the Cemetery, I liked it. But I think I liked the Beyond a lot more. Okay.
House by the Cemetery is one that I feel like is one of Fulci's most underrated, but I will also admit to being the least familiar with it out of the three. Like, every time I watch it, I like it more, but I haven't seen it as many times as I've seen Zombie or especially The Beyond. So I don't want to screw up and say something wrong as we talk about it, but I do feel like this one's time will come.
Yeah, it's interesting because you look at like The Beyond and House by the Cemetery. I mean, it just seems like Fulci was kind of like, wow, home ownership in the States is pretty it's a dicey situation, guys. I don't know if you want to go buying a house because there's a lot of shit that comes with it. But I think it has a really fun opening because like you have, it just opens with like this random woman looking for her boyfriend and ends up with a freaking knife through her head. And I was like, oh my God, okay.
Not effing around.
No, we are not wasting a single moment of that. Like 86, 87 minutes. I forget which. I think Beyond is 87 and this might be 86. But I was like, boy, we are wasting no time. Just getting right into it. But it's interesting because like it's a little more ghosty of a story in a way. Just because you have sort of like this kid Bob and like, he's kind of being led by, this little girl and stuff like that. But I will say Bob is going to need some therapy.
Well, Bob is I think the thing that people object to the most when they talk about House by the Cemetery. I think a lot of people can't get past Bob. And I don't know that it's Giovanni Fresa's performance or if it's just the way that he's dubbed or if it's the fact that he's named Bob. There's something weird about
the dubbing.
him.
Yeah, the dubbing is not great.
It's not,
definitely
no.
The name Bob. Because like you have like his parents have like sort of nice parental names and then you have a kid named Bob.
Bobby makes more sense for a child that age.
Yeah.
Just Bob is unusual.
Yeah, or like Robert.
Right.
Or it's when somebody's named Bob, I'm expecting him to be like a 45-year-old accountant. No offense to anybody named Bob. I'm sure Bob Freelander's gonna be like, what? But like he listens. But like for me, like I'm like, wait, this kid's name is Bob? All right.
Yeah.
All right, if you say so. And he's a cute little kid, he's a little tow-headed kid. But boy, the dubbing, like when I was watching it, Brian came out from the office and he's like, is that Yeardley Smith doing his voice? And I was like, no, might be. I don't even know.
That would be something.
It would be. That'd be a whole different movie. But it was not great in the dubbing department. I liked this. But again, out of the three, I think it was sort of ranked lower than the other two. Just because it's busy too. It's very busy. Mm-hmm. And I think when you get to like something like Zombie or the Beyond, like they're a little more focused, if that's even a thing with, Fulci. I mean, they're still all over, but they seem like they're leading towards something.
Right.
Where this was just kind of like, oh, okay. But again, super awesome effects. Some really nasty stuff. I think I was, that was for the Beyond. Never mind. I'll get to my Dickie stuff when we get to the Beyond because I had some fun stuff with the tarantulas and Dickie the dog. But yeah, I like the backstory to it, but it was like, whose last name is Freudenstein or Freudstein also? Like it's very odd, but not that I disliked it, but it feels odd at times.
So this is part of an unofficial trilogy of films, Fulci's Gates of Hell trilogy, which is City of the Living Dead, House by the Cemetery, and The Beyond, that all of them are sort of about, finding this doorway to hell, more or less. And here it's in the basement of a house. I will say that this has one of the most surprising character deaths for me, because every time I watch it, I'm convinced that Anne, the babysitter, lives to the end.
Right.
And she does not. Like, again, in another movie, she is a character who survives. She protects Bob. She's what's her name from Friday 5, right? She's
nobody's from Friday 5.
you know who I'm talking about.
What's her face?
Kinman? Melanie Kinman?
No, not Kinman. Kinman. I thought you were going with Kathleen Kinmont from Halloween 4. Who runs the center?
Yes.
I know who you're talking about because she's wearing the white shirt at the end, but no bra because nobody had bras.
Listen, don't.
Do you like that? The only thing I know about her character is that she helped run the center, and in the last half of the movie, she's wearing a white shirt with no bra. So that way, like when they're doing all the raid sequences, you just see right through.
You know all the important stuff about her character.
I do. This is why I do what I do for a living.
But we get movies with young kids, and there's sometimes like an adult woman who is sort of the caretaker, and both of them survive to the end. And so you're watching House by the Cemetery convinced that Anne and Bob are going to make it as a power couple, and they do not.
No, I mean, in fact, Anne ends up like her head goes like bobbing along at some point, doesn't it?
Very nice.
Yeah, that was like, again, when that kid like sees like the head's like getting like thrown down the stairs or whatever happens, I was like, oh man, this kid is going to be so messed up. Yeah. If he lives. And I feel like, does he live? Well,
yes and no. I mean, he technically survives, but then the end of the movie is
Here's my thing, because I think it's a really interesting thing, because like we know his parents die like down there, and he supposedly breaks through, but does he? Because maybe when he breaks through there, maybe his body, like maybe his soul goes on with May and Mrs. Freudstein, but maybe he's really dead, because how does he kind of go into the netherworld if he's alive?
I mean, we could bring this up again when we get to the Beyond, because the Beyond ends in almost the exact same way.
True. But it's one of those where I was like, I liked there's a little ambiguity to that, because
I feel like if Fulci wanted us to know he was dead, he would have shown him.
It wasn't like he was playing a game of subtlety there or anything like that. But do you want to watch in a Fulci movie like a little kid getting dismantled?
I don't, but I'm sure a lot of people do.
I mean, it is Bob after all.
Exactly. I think a lot of people would have been thrilled if Bob died.
Yeah, I don't know. It was interesting because I sort of liked that you really could interpret that two ways.
Yeah.
I think the Beyond, I feel like there's really only one interpretation for it, that they don't make it. I don't feel like they make it at the end of the Beyond.
Well, they're more or less in hell. I mean. Yeah.
Which again, we'll get to, but it also reminded me of The Void, like how that sort of ended.
Oh,
but that's
yeah.
not like that. Yeah. But yeah, I with Bob, I felt like it was a little more ambiguous.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. But I like that. Like, I thought that was interesting because there's Mrs. Freudstein. She's all prim and proper now, and the little girl's there, and they just kind of walk off. And I was like, could a living being go and exist in their world like that?
Right.
I don't know. It was interesting to me.
If you have the right bowl cut, you can do anything.
Look, I had the bowl cut. Don't harp on that.
That's called
funny.
The Bob.
Yeah, it was called the Joey Lawrence too for a long time, which is funny because I was reading this thing, and this is a real thing that was on Give Me a Break in the 80s, and I don't know if you remember this because I used to watch Give Me a Break, and once I read the synopsis, I was like, holy shit, this really was a real thing. But December 9th, 1984, the episode of Give Me a Break was that Samantha was mad because Nell wouldn't let her go camping with her friends. And Joey was supposed to perform for Nell's choir group at her
I remember
church.
this.
And Samantha puts him in blackface to perform at Nell's church.
Yep, I remember this.
In 1984 television. And I was showing Brian the tweet about it, and he's like, first of all, he was like, wait, that's Joey Lawrence? I was like, yeah. I was like, you didn't know that was that kid? And he's like, oh my God, I didn't. I was like, yeah. And he's like, look at that haircut. I was like, everybody had that haircut. I had that haircut. It was a gender neutral haircut. Everybody had it. So when I saw Bob's hair, I was like, oh, he's got the Joey Lawrence before Joey Lawrence had it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a terrible haircut that parents did to kids in the 80s. And you kids that were born in the 90s or beyond, you were really lucky. Okay. Because you did not have to suffer the indignities of the bowl cut.
Or Joey Lawrence in blackface.
Yeah, that too. Because, oh my God, I still can't and as a kid, it didn't really, dawn on me what I was seeing. I knew it was a bad thing.
Right.
But now as an adult, I was like, Jesus, Like, why would you do that?
There was another episode where Paul Williams of Phantom of the Paradise plays like a racist children's entertainer who needs a blood transfusion and gets it from Nell and is mad because now he has a black woman's blood in his body. And I feel like that was like where I learned about racism.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably Give Me a Break sort of open. You know what I think? It was also Different Strokes kind of opened me up a little bit to it too. But yeah, like I completely forgot that was Paul Williams. I know that storyline. I didn't realize that was Paul Williams.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was my introduction to Paul Williams.
Whew.
Yeah.
Wow. And you still love Phantom of the Paradise.
And I still love it, even though I know that he's a damn racist.
Oh, but he also did all the music for the Muppet Christmas Carol.
And the Muppet movie. Why don't you like lead with that?
Because I watch Muppet Christmas Carol more, I think.
Really?
Well, I mean, I have Muppet Christmas Carol because I watch it like a lot during the holidays because it's so perfect and it's so wonderful and it's Michael Caine. And I just don't have the Muppet movies. But now I do because of Disney Plus. So I can go back and watch. But yes, I did know that he did the Muppet movie also.
Is Muppet Christmas Carol on Disney Plus?
It is. And it looks so much better because I've only ever had the DVD of it.
Yeah, me too.
Because I don't think there was a Blu-ray ever released. Maybe there was and I just missed it or something. But I've always watched the DVD, which is like this boxy little fuzzy version of it. And it was actually the first thing I watched on Disney Plus.
Oh, nice.
Yes. I was like, I could watch Avatar, but I'm going to watch Muppet Christmas Carol. So take that, Disney.
I'm glad that we could talk about Muppet Christmas Carol on an episode devoted to Fulci.
Right? I mean,
this is why people listen to Horror BFFs and why they missed us
Christmas spectacular,
the month that we were gone.
Right. Yeah, they literally could have just reran any episode with us and nobody would have even noticed we weren't here. That's us in a nutshell.
You're totally right, which is depressing.
It's great to be loved, isn't it?
House by the Cemetery is, of course, the greatest and clearest influence on Ted Geoghegan's We Are Still Here.
Oh, yeah. Now I see it because I saw We Are Still Here and I loved it. But now, in retrospect, like when you talk about movies that would pair well with this, obviously, I would go We Are Still Here because that would work incredibly well. Oh, my God. Yeah. Yeah, I was like, oh, I could see where Ted was going with everything now. Not that I couldn't see where he was going, but now it's like, it's a little clearer, you know? But yeah, totally.
This and The Beyond are also a heavy influence on Jackson Stewart's Beyond the Gates.
Yes.
Which
I
is
feel
right
like
there
I
in the
know
title.
somebody who might, I feel like somebody might be quoted on that movie. I'm not sure. On the front.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it the person who named it their favorite horror movie of that year? No.
No, but I think I put it on my favorites of that year.
It's not the same.
I don't like to quantify things with numbers. Everything is my favorite.
All right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry.
No, it's fine. That just happened again. No, that just happened again recently. What movie was it? Where it was a movie that like I have been like talking up, and then you got quoted on it.
I don't know.
It was something else pretty recent. I can't remember what it was.
I don't know. I think it was it wasn't the Child's Play remake.
Oh, I know what it was. It was The Ranger.
One? Which one?
The Ranger.
Oh yeah. I don't even think I actually formally reviewed it.
I don't think you did.
That is the power of the Wixson. No, I mean, it's a super fun movie, and I'm so glad I got to cover it.
Yeah.
But it was like one of those, when I came out of South by, I just lost track of time, and I had to like jump into the next, things that I was trying to get done, and I just never got a chance to do a formal review. And I know you were seeing it out of Chicago, and I was like, oh, I'll have you do the review. I think you'll like it. Which I was right. Yeah. And yeah, sure enough, I get quoted, and poor Patrick gets left standing there in the corner.
It's fine.
I'm sorry. If it makes you feel any better, I think I might have gotten quoted on the back of the Crawl box, and they never sent me a copy.
Well, that's bogus.
I know. Because I would really love to watch Crawl again, but I just haven't had it in the budget to go buy it. And I was like, I think I might have gotten quoted on the back of it. But I don't know for sure because I don't own it. So, but I am on the cover of Child's Play 2019.
Yes, you are.
I am. Damn it. So that's my badge of honor for this year.
Yeah, no, it's a good one.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I actually rewatched it a couple weeks ago, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty awesome, and I stand by it.
Nice.
Yeah, but I didn't get quoted on the House of the Cemetery, so what do I know?
No, it's all right. It's all right. So then we get to The Beyond, which came out the same year as House by the Cemetery. So Fulci made
a busy year.
Both of these movies in the same year. He was very prolific in the early 80s because he also had The Black Cat this same year, which is another pretty underrated Fulci, and 3 movies the year before that. So he made 6 movies in 2 years.
Jesus.
Yeah, he was on fire. And this is all my favorite period of Fulci. You know, most of my favorite movies of his came out during these years. By the mid to late 80s, he'd kind of lost, for me, a little bit of the magic. But The Beyond is my favorite Fulci movie and one of my favorite horror movies, period. It's an insane movie that, again, has the logic of a dream/nightmare. And once again is just about the doorway to hell being opened, this time in the basement of a hotel in New Orleans. And it has a number of show-stopping sequences, a few of which you had teased that you wanted to talk about, including the tarantulas and the dog.
Yes. I really loved The Beyond. I think so far out of the 3 that I've watched, Zombie and The Beyond are pretty close to me, but I think The Beyond is the one that I enjoyed the most, just because I love sort of nightmare logic stuff. Again, when you talk about movies that open with some harrowing shit, like this movie does not mess around.
No, it does not.
Because like basically the warlock dude, Swifty, I don't know.
I believe it's Swifty.
Yes, I'm going to go Rick and Morty for a second. He was getting swifty with it.
Schweik. You were right. It's Schweik.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It was one of those, I actually wrote down notes when I was getting ready to do my interview. So I actually wrote notes for these movies because I wanted to make sure I didn't screw it up like an idiot, like the idiot I usually am. But like that opening, dear God, like, look, I've seen some stuff. I mean, I haven't seen Cannibal Holocaust, and I still got to get myself to that point where I'm going to go watch Cannibal Holocaust. Because, you know, I gotta get there, but I gotta work my way up to it.
You can watch the version without the animal torture.
That's probably gonna be the version I watch. I'm not gonna lie.
That's the one I watch when I watch it. Because
I am a wuss. But I was not like, I knew, like, we, you know, again, when you have DeRossi working with Fulci, like, I was like, okay, we know we're going to see some shit in this. I was not expecting for like that first like 5 minutes to be like, oh my God. Like it was it was like Passion of the Christ harrowing.
Yeah.
Like it was, intense. It really is. And again, it is one hell of a way to open a movie because you're like, oh, okay, we are not messing around once again. But it's some pretty gnarly stuff. And I really like the story because I love sort of New Orleans as like a backdrop because, you know, that city itself just has like such a really fun, unusual vibe to it. Like when you go there, you feel like you're in a completely different world.
Yeah.
Beyond the fact that there's like that oppressive humidity and you're sweating when you're standing still because it's just so much. But I think the backdrop of New Orleans really adds a lot to this. And it's really interesting to me because you have, you know, in the other movies, you know, Fulci's kind of dabbling in like New York stuff. Like, you know, Zombie kind of goes to the Caribbean, but there's also New York. Yeah. So it's very, you know, Northeastern type of stuff. And this is very just oozing in sort of that Southern atmosphere. And it really adds a lot to it. It adds to that gooiness because there's a lot of gooiness in this movie.
It's a gooey movie.
There's your quote. It's a gooey movie.
It's a gooey movie that really, teaches us not to store jars of acid on the top shelf.
Nope. There's a lot of life lessons in this movie. First of all, don't open a hotel in New Orleans. I think that's your first and foremost.
If you're thinking about a career in plumbing, rethink that career.
Yeah. And if you're going to do it, don't do it in New Orleans, and don't put Jesus things on your truck either, because you're just inviting the devil to come and get you.
Consider, if you're vision impaired, consider getting a seeing eye cat.
Yes. They probably won't eat you. That was like when I was texting you and I was watching that scene, because at first, because it's Emily, right? That's the blind character, right? Yeah. So she's like, in her house or whatever, and like Dickie, her dog, her seeing eye dog, is there, and like all these like ghouls are coming at her, and Dickie's doing his job and he's keeping those ghouls away, and she's like, "Get him, Dickie!" And I was like, "Yeah, Dickie, you get him." And I'm like, and he's taking down all these like gooey monsters and everything like that, and you're like, all right, everything is good and safe, and you're like, of course you should know you're not safe. And then like all of a sudden Dickie turns on her and like starts eating her, and I was like, oh shit, bad boy Dickie. I was like, you are not being a very good boy right now. But I love like that sequence, because it's such a good setup where you're like, okay, this dog is meant to be her protector, and he's doing his job, and you're like, okay, everything is going to be fine. And then the dog turns on her and just like literally tears her throat out. And I was like, oh boy.
Yeah.
It's like, it still reminds me of like my favorite thing ever. Years ago, and I guess, because people don't watch horror movies all the time or whatever, but we were at the screening for The Strangers, the sequel, and there's the scene where the cop shows up, and I'm like, to me, it was like the Dickie situation where you're like, all right, Dickie's going to take care of this. Everything's good now. And I got rooked into it. And I remember with The Strangers, like there's a point where the cops roll up into the trailer park, and this girl next to me, who obviously was not a horror fan, because she was just on pins and needles the entire time, and she was like audibly in this little screening room goes, "Oh, thank God." And I just was like, oh, you have no idea, do you? And I got totally caught up in the moment where I was like, oh, Dickie took care of it. Emily's going to be fine. And then I was like, oh, nope, Dickie's eating Emily. But there's a lot of creatures feasting on human flesh in this movie. That's for sure.
Yeah. Dickie and the tarantulas are both those nightmare scenes.
That was the name of my band.
Dickie and the Tarantulas. You guys were pretty good.
Yeah, that's a really good name for like a band in the 50s.
Yeah.
Somebody should make a T-shirt of Dickie and the Tarantulas.
But they're both, again, those nightmare sequences that go on much longer than you think. You don't totally understand what's happening or why, but you can't. In particular, the tarantulas, because it's so slow and it's so drawn out, but you can't avoid what's coming. The dog one is more like the nightmare is the shock and surprise of what's happening. It's not that it goes on for such a long time, but it's like, oh, this thing that I love and trusted has turned on me, and I don't understand why, but it just killed me. And and it feels like a nightmare. The tarantulas, barring some of the iffy effects, because if you watch the tarantulas in the back, they're very lazy. They're not really moving. They're just sort of clearly rubber spiders on strings being pulled forward, and then the ones in the front are doing all the hard work. But again, the amount of time that takes to play out and the way that it all shakes out is very much right out of a nightmare.
It is. And it's funny because when I was growing up, one of my mom's boyfriends who lived with us had a tarantula. And this goddamn tarantula came to live with us, and his name was Dirty Harry.
Nice. And
we had to feed him crickets, and I was always terrified that thing was going to get out of the cage and come get me.
Sure.
And I, for 2.5 years, I'm always a sleep with the bedroom door open person. I slept for 2.5 years until that thing died, with my door closed, and I usually had a towel against the bottom of the door, because I was convinced Dirty Harry was going to get out of his cage and come and eat me.
Sure.
And see, maybe in the back of my head, I knew the beyond was out there, and I knew tarantulas were going to come for us one day.
Yeah.
But yeah, that scene is super duper gnarly.
Yeah.
And I don't really like tarantulas in general. It's a very heightened, unrealistic scene, because tarantulas really don't they're not after human flesh.
No, they're not.
They are carnivores, but they're more like, like Dirty Harry never even like turned on my mom's boyfriend until he got older and cranky. Like, because Dan would like put his hand into the tank and that spider never reared at him once. Like up until like the last 6 months of his life when he was I think he was old and disoriented.
Okay.
But like the crickets would go in and he would just go and wait for the crickets and eat the crickets. But he never once lunged at my mom's boyfriend, which is kind of crazy because he'd always have his hand in there. Like sometimes Dan would actually hold him and I'd be like, oh my God. I remember once he actually had him out of the cage and I didn't know it. And I came walking in the house and Dan was sitting in our dining room with it in his hand. And I ran right out the door. And I went over to Jenna's and I called home and I said, please let me know when the spider's away because I won't come home until then.
Yeah.
And then when the spider died, this is so crazy. So they flushed him down our toilet. And I refused to use our toilet for an entire month.
Wow.
So I had to go to Jenna's house like multiple times a day.
Wow.
Because she lived 2 houses away from me and I refused. Or if I had to go in, I would go real quick and I would stand and I would run out and then I'd run back in, flush, and then run back out again. And I'd go wash my hands in the kitchen. I couldn't be in that room for more than 20 seconds. I would put stuff on top of the toilet lid when I had to take a shower or a bath. Yeah, I was terrified.
Imagine if you had seen The Beyond at that age.
Jesus, I would have been traumatized. But yeah, I was like, because I always knew that they had like a really crazy tarantula scene in that movie. And it definitely lives up. I mean, you can tell the difference between the real ones and the fake ones. Yeah. But it's still very, it makes your skin crawl. By the way, for Dickie and the Tarantulas, I do imagine that there is a tarantula playing drums with its multiple legs.
Ooh, I like it.
And it has multiple drumsticks. If anybody wants to make that into a thing, it's all yours. Yeah. But I was imagining that where Dickie was like lead guitar and he's doing the vocals and there's a tarantula on drums, and tarantula playing keyboard as well. Yes. This has literally just been running through my head this whole time.
Dickie and the Tarantulas.
I like it. But yeah, I really, and again, once we get to the sort of the ending of The Beyond, I immediately was reminded of The Void.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was like, oh, interesting. And I think it made me like the end of The Void better. Because there's a lot that I like about The Void, but I don't think it all kind of comes together the way I wanted it to.
I would agree with that.
It's, but I mean, maybe it was just really sort of Lovecraftian Fulci in its intent, where it just was kind of giving you a bunch of craziness and getting you to this place. So I appreciate it. I think I almost appreciate The Void now more after seeing The Beyond. But boy, like just the way that like they did like, the goopy, nasty effects in that movie, like everything just feels like it has moisture. Yeah,
it's a wet movie.
Yeah. And I looked up, I think the house still exists. Cool. I think it's actually like a historical house, so it's protected. Oh. And maybe it's historic for other reasons, but I feel like it is historic because of The Beyond.
For sure it is. I was in New Orleans about a year and a half ago and for work, and I really wish I would have gone to see the Beyond house.
You should have.
I know.
I was there 2 years ago also, and I didn't go. I'm a jerk. So what did we know?
We're both the worst.
We are. That's why nobody misses us.
I do like at the end of the movie kind of turns into a zombie movie out of nowhere.
Yeah, no, it definitely like all of a sudden you're like, oh, we've got, basically goopy, gory monsters who can't be killed and, literally coming out of the woodwork or claywork or mudwork or whatever wordplay you want to put in there.
The death of Pippi Longstocking is one for the ages.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Speaking of, you had mentioned about Bob, like, I don't think, people want to see Fulci kill a kid. Like, well, then you shouldn't see The Beyond, because boy, does he ever kill a kid in The Beyond.
I know, it's interesting, because doesn't the little girl in the house by the cemetery also have pigtail braids?
I believe so.
So at first, I was like, are they connected? Is that the little girl from The Beyond?
No, I don't think so.
No, I know it's not. But in the back of my head, I was like, oh, that would be weird if that was sort of like this weird little connection. but no, it's not. But it was just my brain focuses on the weirdest, dumbest details ever sometimes. And I like to draw lines to things because I like to try to make sense of them, even though they don't make sense.
So your ranking of these movies would go The Beyond, Zombie, House by the Cemetery.
Yes. And I'm excited for more Fulci now. Like I'm really excited for like next month so I can kind of get more into the other things that you sent me that I can finally take some time to watch.
Yeah, what else is on that disc? It's Don't Torture a Duckling, City of the Living Dead.
And I think it's I think the House by the Cemetery is that
House by the Cemetery.
And then you sent me something separate.
The Beyond, I think, was the separate one.
No, you didn't send me The Beyond because I was actually surprised. No, because when I was looking, I ended up watching it on Shudder.
I didn't. I thought I sent you The Beyond.
No, it was something. I think you sent me The New York Ripper. Oh,
maybe.
I think you did.
That was a weird choice on my part.
Hey, I didn't know. I was just excited to get Fulci at her. I was like, oh wow. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I have The New York Ripper, and I know I didn't buy that.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I actually thought you had given me The Beyond, but I looked through all my B's and all my T's, and they were not there, just in case I was dumb and put them under T.
Yeah, I thought I thought it was the 4-pack and then The Beyond, but I'm remembering things wrong.
It's okay. It was a few years ago too, so it took me a while.
Yeah.
But again, it was the Shudder. Shudder, like The Daily Dead. Shudder really came through again because they had actually had all three.
Yeah.
On there, so it was kind of nice just to kind of beep up boop and kind of roll them all into each other.
Well, that's the sound of using Shudder.
It is beep up boop. That's trademark Shudder. Don't steal it. So, but I was really excited, and I think for anybody who's listening and you've never quite opened yourself up to Fulci, like there's a lot of as we call the WTF-ery, as I like to, it's my little phrase. There's a lot of that in these movies, but I think it works, and I think it usually, in most cases, from these three movies at least in particular, it works to the benefit of the overall story and atmosphere. And I really liked it. Like I am full on Fulci now.
Nice. Well, I'm very happy to hear that.
I've got a raging Fulci now.
Nice.
So, no, it's just nice to like kind of break, because I grew up just basically mostly watching Argento, which I can't even believe to say like watching Argento movies is like basic viewing, because it isn't, because most people don't, casual movie fans don't know who he is. But I almost feel like I was a basic horror fan because I was only watching, Tenebra or Suspiria or Phenomena, or I forget what's the other name that it was actually under.
Phenomena was Creepers.
Creepers, yes. You know what I mean? So it's like that was sort of like my Italian horror experience. So now I feel a little more well-rounded. I almost want to do a series called like a tour of Italy, and like every month do like a new Italian movie. But I'm sure somebody's done that already. So that would be just me ripping somebody off, and I don't need to do that. There's enough of that on the internet.
There's plenty of it.
By the way, can I tell you something funny? I don't know if you saw this because you were kind of busy and sick a lot over the fall. So remember years ago, after poor George Romero passed away, and I came to you guys and I was like, I really want to do Romero-ween. And then you made fun of me because you said it sounded like Romero penis we were talking about. Okay,
so I sort of remember this.
Yes. And you know what? There was another site this year that did Romero-ween, and I was like, good on them that they did it because somebody should. And I thought of you, and I was like, it doesn't sound like penis. So I just
sounds
thought that was funny.
A little bit like penis.
It does sound a little bit like penis, but but it was just funny. I was like, yes, somebody used it. Because if we weren't going to use it, somebody should.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those where I saw that, I was like, huh. I was like, that good on them. So I just thought of that. When it was like October and I saw that, I almost sent it to you and been like, see, it wasn't a terrible idea. It's actually fun. But you're like, it just sounds like penis.
It does sound like penis.
Well, it's all in Halloween. It's not my fault that the holiday ends with ween.
It is not your fault. It's
not my fault.
I cannot blame you for that. I can try, but I would fail.
It's the most penisy of holidays.
And with that, we will wrap up.
That's a perfect note.
We will wrap up another episode of Corpse Club Horror BFFs, our final Horror BFFs for the year. So thank you, Heather, for another
decade.
And decade. My God, thank you for another year of doing this show with me.
Oh, you're welcome. I know. We only got 11 in this year. So here's my question to you. So this year we did all of the 2009 remakes.
Yeah.
Do we dare do the 2010s next year?
Are there enough?
I don't know, but I know at least one that's going to be there.
In 2010, what?
We're going to probably have to take a trip to Elm Street.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah.
I mean, we can certainly...
I'll do some research and see what we got.
Okay. We could certainly do that as an episode.
You're like, we can definitely do that if you want.
Whether or not we do a whole series, we can do that one.
All right. Well, I'll look into our remakes and see what we're looking at for 2010.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know off the top of my head. I just remember 2009 was a really big remake year. So
yeah, it definitely was. Well, we had the Crazies in 2010.
Oh yeah. I'm sure there's going to be some stuff in there.
I Spit on Your Grave remake.
Oh, okay.
Let Me In.
Oh, I'll talk about Let Me In.
Yeah, Piranha 3D.
Oh yeah, that was 2010, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
All right, I feel like we already have a few that we like. I think we can do this.
Our next year, The Wolfman. Our next year is set. Basically, we're just doing remakes.
All right. Woo woo! We're just the remake people now.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We're just we're remaking the remakes.
Anyway, thank you again for listening. Thanks for being with us every week, every month. Make sure you go to dailydead.com and check out all the great writing there, most of it from Heather. And thank you to Brian for engineering our episode, editing our episode. Check out Corpse Club on Twitter and go to corpseclub.com to find out how you too could become a member of the Corpse Club in the new year.
Yep, I can't believe it. So what are really quick before we go, what are your two movie resolutions?
Oh, I need to think of it. I have no idea.
Okay, because I remember a few years ago we talked about that, and one of mine was to watch more Italian horror. So
yes,
I feel like 10 years later, I'm finally on my way now. So.
Mine was like to watch all of the X-Files, which I haven't done, and to watch more like super indie movies, which maybe I've done.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah, so I'll have to come up with some new ones for our January episode. Yeah,
we'll talk about that at the beginning of when we get into whatever remake we get into that month. But yeah, I'm like, oh man, it's all changing.
Yeah,
it's all going full circle now. So we'll see.
Fulci circle.
Fulci circle. I like it. We got to come up with lots of Fulci puns. We're going to have to do this again after my next 3 Fulcis. Too,
Fulci throttle.
Yes. That sounds dirty.
Not dirtier than Romero Ween.
That's true.
Anyway, thank you guys. Until next time, stay scary.
And merry.